back in the field, though you can see we aren't in the field today. This is my office, and I'm just recovering from some flu, so I'm not really up to being out in the field at the moment anyway. Trying to remain close to the bathroom for obvious reasons. But I figured since I'm already nauseous, I may as well do a little bit of reading from some crazy people. And I have to tell you, I've always known that people who are pro-wolf tend to be pretty crazy. And I mean, no offense to you if you're pro-wolf, because some people don't realize what they're subscribing to. And I didn't even realize how bad it was until I started reading some of their advocacy stuff. What do they even call this? This is a guide for working together using science, inclusivity, yeah, and ethical practices, which they openly say they have to disregard some of the science. They say you can't base a lot of these management decisions around wolves on science. They openly say that, even though their main thing is saying it's using science. And it's not. Once you actually read what they're saying, they're actually not inclusive at all. They're exclusive, and we can get into that. And also, their ethical practices, well, let's just say, at a baseline level, they're advocating for fascism, which I would classify as unethical. But we can get into that. Like, their words will tell you that, and I'm not exaggerating at all. This made me more nauseous than I thought it would when I read it. But it's a long manifesto here. I'll leave links to these things, and you can read them for yourself. This is 22 pages, and I've made it to page 7, and I've had enough, and I think I got the general idea. So, pro-wolf people will claim a lot of things, and so they have 3 central questions they want to answer to managing and creating a wolf wildlife plan. The question number 1 is, what is the goal of the conservation management plan? Why is the goal appropriate? And how can the goal be accomplished? So these are all basic questions. I have no problem with them. Now, they could summarize what they say for you to answer these questions into one easy sentence, but they use a whole lot of confusing jargon to make themselves sound smart and to confuse you. It's both things. They want to sound smart and confuse you. That's both. That's what they want to achieve, both. So let me just read their answer to question 1. What is the goal of this management plan? We envision a state wolf plan that prioritizes wolf stewardship and a broader vision of conserving species in the face of global climate change and mass extinctions. So the first thing I have, they want to prioritize the wolf over everything else. They've said that here. And they want to do it because global climate change is causing mass extinctions. Okay, so number 1, mass extinctions aren't happening. Scientists, whether you're a young Earth creationist like me or a Big Bang evolutionist, both agree that there was one mass extinction event. And we say it was Noah's flood. They say it was an asteroid. And there's some overlap there, and we can get into that some other time. But the point is that was a mass extinction event. Look around, that's not happening. Clearly not happening. And so their claim that global climate change is causing mass extinctions is put on rocky slope already because mass extinctions aren't happening. So climate change likely isn't happening either, which it's not. It's a big hoax. We can get into that another time. I have some videos on it. But you can pretty much disprove climate change with middle school math and middle school science. It's that easy to disprove. It's not happening. But anyway, let's continue here. They continue by saying, we aspire to a plan which allows wolves to fulfill their ecological niche in current and foreseeable environmental and social conditions. Now, I don't understand how a wild animal can have a social condition prerequisite. Like, how does a wolf have an ecological niche based on a social condition like American society social condition. I don't, that doesn't make sense. I think it's designed to be confusing. Anyway, they continue, resulting in a self-sustaining and largely self-regulating populations as driven by available prey, habitat, and wolf structures. So that's a big, complicated, fancy way of saying they want wolves to manage wildlife instead of people. And their love of wolves goes beyond crazy. Like they put wolves ahead of people in many levels, and I'm not even sure they're aware of it. But let's continue here. They continue and say, geared toward human-wolf coexistence, the plan prevents and mitigates conflicts in wolf killing through non-lethal measures, well-funded programs, technical assistance, and educational outreach. The plan includes enforceable rules adopted by the state commission or board through a public process, providing for accountability and full transparency. The plan further explores expanding funding potentials to supplement traditional agency sources. So, right off the bat, they get through a bunch of jargon here. So what they're saying is they need funding because without human managed, let's put it this way, if wolves are managing the populations instead of people, you don't have the sale of hunting licenses. Without the traditional North American wildlife management plan, where hunting licenses go to manage habitat and the hunters manage the wildlife, they don't have any money. And they acknowledge that it's going to take money. They actually say it right here. It's going to need to have a well-funded program. It's going to be expensive, and they're going to have to expand further funding potential to continue this program. So they're saying it's going to be expensive, and they're saying that conflicts exist. They're openly admitting conflicts between people and wolves exist. In the same sentence that they're saying humans coexist with wolves, they're saying conflicts exist. I don't know how much more of an oxymoron that can be, but the funny part is they're saying it's going to be expensive and conflicts exist. And the other thing to note here is state commissions or state boards make the decisions, not locals or property owners, not civilians, not the public, an appointed board. And they get more into that later, and it's a bunch of their answer to question 2 of why are these goals appropriate is a whole page of a whole lot of jargon that basically boils down to we need to cut the typical hunter out and get people from outside sources and scientific expertise and background to make all of these wolf management decisions, so that the locals, property owners, the hunters, the real people who this affects have very little say. And that's really what they boil down to here in they're saying the wolves have lots of intelligence and the people who live with them do not. Is basically what it is. People out here in the backcountry who have to deal with them don't get a say. The science, even though they say the science can't always be used, the science will guide their... That's the synopsis for this confusing answer to their second question, if you're keeping up with me so far, because this whole thing is confusing. So their answer to their own question of question 3, how are these goals to be accomplished? Let me just read here. Wolf plans will incorporate the best available science, even though they've just said that they'll have to disregard the science at some point, and traditional ecological knowledge, or tech for short, which is funny. Available science and tech, even though it's traditional ecological knowledge. They don't elaborate on what traditional ecological knowledge means. I think they assume you're supposed to know, or they're just trying to sound smart. I continue. Manifest the democratic principles of fair and inclusive representation and acknowledge conflicting values among stakeholders through an ethical lens. Wolf planning will prioritize the findings and recommendations of scientific and technical advisory committee members There's the prioritized other that's not you, comprised of agency and outside expert, scientific, regulatory, and ethical considerations central to the wolf conservation. Well, hey, Beulah's down here. Where was I? The planning process may also include input from public advisory groups, sometimes called stakeholder advisory groups, whose composition is likely to include those with traditional values and or anti-wolf sentiment. Nevertheless, appointees to the stakeholder advisory group must affirm that wolves belong on the landscape and coexistence is an undisputed priority. So there's a huge problem I have with this whole statement. They just said that people who disagree with them can be on the board as long as they admit their disagreement is invalid and not up to dispute. Completely against free speech. They don't want you to have a say if you disagree with them. Like the whole point of me saying wolves, me being against wolves, is the whole point. That's the whole point. They don't want you to. It's an undisputed. How do I say that more clearly? So, the only thing that you or I, who are not pro-wolf, who want to manage the wolves, who are, as they say, anti-wolf. If you're anti-wolf like me, you must, in order to serve on this advisory panel to get your voice heard, admit that your stance as an anti-wolfer is invalid and not up to debate, even though that's the only thing we would debate. that by definition is radical fascism causing communism and socialism. That's the opposite of American freedom. That's the opposite of free speech. That's the opposite of the First Amendment. Our voice is not heard, and according to them, it's undisputed. You cannot dispute it. And that's the only thing we would really dispute is our spot on the food chain. Humans, whether you're a young earth creationist like me or an evolutionist, humans are the top of the food chain. And we did not get there by giving it to the wolves. And I have to tell you, these people who are writing this are wolves in sheep's clothing. They're trying to get you to give up your right to say things on what's happening in your backyard. Do not let them. It goes on to say that the state will handle a lot of it and talk with other sovereign powers like tribal leaders. In a nutshell, these people are openly saying, you and I, as hunters, do not get a say in the future management plans of wildlife in this country. And they're using the wolf to do it. And I could go on for days. This whole thing right here is a joke to me. Like I can't believe what I'm reading, and they're writing it. Like, this is something that, some satire person would make up because it's so absurd. It's so stupid. It's so not American. You can go read it for yourself. Have thoughts of your own. I don't even know how to end this, because my stance on wolves is I don't want them extinct, but I want to be able to shoot them because they are problems. They're problems. There's a reason we hunted them so heavily. It's because they cause problems. Ask anyone who lives, works, plays in wolf country. They cause problems. And what I would say to someone who's pro-wolf is put wolves in your local park. Put them in your backyard, and you'll understand exactly why we don't want wolves in our backyard. Just because our backyard's bigger doesn't mean wolves aren't any less of a problem. One thing I will tell you is if you put wolves in your local park, your homeless problem will literally disappear, but you'll have a whole host of other problems. Anyway, until next time, I hope to see you in the field. But if not, we'll see you in the kingdom.